So, hey everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion, the value of visualizing data the right way. My name is Carolyn, and I'm head of design and manager of our Sovanta App House location app in Hamburg. And we have three great speakers with us here today, who are all experts in the field of data visualization and who will share their experiences with us today. So just a few housekeeping notes before we start. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we will try to answer them either during the session, or we also have some time at the end of the session. And if we can't answer all of them, we will get back to you afterwards. And the overall session is planned for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on your questions and input, and it will be recorded and made available also later on. So let's start with the introduction of our speakers. With us today is Alissa Sylvestre. She's Director, User Experience and Business Design at ConvergentIS in Calgary, Canada. With over 15 years of business experience, she led several transformation projects, and her strengths lies in business process optimization and user experience improvement by designing simple, effective applications, always following a human-centered design approach. And she describes herself as a passionate about helping customers find the art of the possible and how to present and understand data. So good morning to Canada. Good morning, Alissa. Great to have you on board.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
And our next expert is Erika Bertram. He's leading the operations and service team of the newly created SAP BTP Experience Organization and holds a PhD in theoretical astrophysics. He describes himself as a theoretical astrophysicist, a hard word, with a passion for modern computer technologies. And as such, he's passionate about how data can be visualized in the right way, independent of whether the data is coming from star forming regions in the galaxy or from the economy. And in parallel, he is also working as a professor for digital business management at Fresenius University of Applied Science. Also to you, a warm welcome, Eric, and thank you for joining our round.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Antje Liebold. She's Senior Project Manager at Sovanta. And Antje has been working over 10 years now with the business intelligence context and leading various business applications and dashboard projects. That has shaped her mind towards data-driven decision-making. And Antje is also passionate about inspiring business users to act by using the right methods and best practices, in the end with the right data visualization tools, to be prepared for the digital transformation. So also thanks, Antje, for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's start with the topic for today, data visualization. A huge amount of data is collected day after day, but a lot of it is not really usable. And this despite the fact that data is not longer just a competitive advantage, it's really critical to the health and often to the survival of an organization. According to various studies, data leading companies have higher profit and also a better customer retention. So my first question would be, what separates the truly data-driven companies from the rest, and what is necessary to transition to a data culture? Eric, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Carolyn. First of all, for the lovely introduction. Thanks for having me. Let me take that first question. So by using facts and decisions, you are more likely to make those decisions better. And there exists a very famous quote from Peter Drucker, for those of all of the audience who don't know him yet, that's an Austrian economist. And he said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that means for a data-driven culture, it's important to be able to understand and interpret the displayed data And you also need to be able to trust the data. And part of that is knowing its weak points. And in the introduction from Carolyn, it's been said, I've been working as a theoretical astrophysics, and part of the job is to analyze a lot of data coming from observations, for example, and all these data might be biased, for example, or it might be incomplete. And the same holds, of course, for data from the economy. And but despite that, data-driven economies clearly got a strong competitive advantage, and utilizing and leveraging the data strategy is of crucial importance for modern companies.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I understood it's a lot about decision making, but Antje, why is data-driven decision making so important?
Yes, it's first of all, I mean, intuition or gut feeling, in the contrary, might be a good start. Sometimes you know what is right or what is wrong, but it would be a mistake to base all decisions only around gut feeling. It's only with the help of data you can somehow quantify, verify, or understand really the reality. So still, many business people rely on their gut feelings, even if they're confronted with the evidence of the contrary. So yeah, data-driven decision making is extremely important to overcome this issue.
Okay. Alissa, do you want to add something here? Do you have any thoughts about decision making and the relevance of data?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also, to what Antje said, it's not just using intuition, it's based on facts. And I think another critical thing is that a lot of people I find are presenting data without really understanding the meaning behind it. So they're not, it's more than just the numbers, right? And from personal experience, I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in where people are just presenting numbers, they're going through rows and columns. So it's all about what is that data telling you, and it's the story behind it that I think is also really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I see there is a huge value in having the right data at the right time, but the steps to get there needs to be clear, right? So I see a few main steps like aligning on the right metrics, building the right data sources, also converting this complex data into easy, understandable, and consumable information. If we have a look at these steps in detail, so Alissa, how would you start? How would you align on the right metrics or find the right metrics?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's critical to understand what's most important to the organization, right? So it can be either an organization, a department, or a project, whatever you're working on, and kind of digging deep and seeing what's really most important. What is it we're trying to tell, or what story are we trying to understand? And then, every organization or department has a different way of measuring their success. They use different KPIs. So how are they measuring them? And then from there, I think once you've done that, we can get some alignment. And in the workshops that I lead, there's a couple different techniques that I use, and I think a lot of it is around kind of individual brainstorming, and then bringing everybody together just to have some voting around, okay, which one do you think is most important, and go through each of the team members to have that individual voting. And usually through that, we get alignment, right? Because everybody's coming at it from a common area, common space.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can build on that, what Alissa just said, because I think what is crucial really about metrics, and we are evaluating a lot of metrics day by day at SAP in our company. I think it's very crucial to first ask the right question before you set the metric. And many people do it the other way around. So I've seen that very often. People are looking always for metrics. Everybody loves metrics. Everybody wants to measure it. Of course, me as a physicist, I love to measure things. That is quite natural. But first and foremost, we should focus on the business, ask the right question, and then if we got the question, then I can build the metric on it and answer the question via the appropriate metric.
Yeah, and I think also that most of the people think they know already what kind of metrics they need. But often, I mean, when I start such kind of a project, the very first workshop, the first sentence is, okay, I don't want to hear anything about any KPI. first, we focus on the question, why? Why do you want to do that? What is the purpose? What is the objective? And then along the way, we can somehow, in the end, or maybe in the next workshop, really discuss about metrics, KPIs, whatsoever. I think this is one of the hardest point to get inside everybody's head, but it's as Alissa and Eric said, it's the most important and crucial point at the very beginning.
Yeah, good point. And when you know the right questions and also get from there to the right metrics, of course, data, it's not so easy to then also find and build the right data sources, right, that address these metrics and help you to make this critical decision points. So Antje, do you have any ideas how to proceed here?
Yes, I mean it's a quite technical. It's more or less the more technical point of view. But I mean, as long as you know what you want to measure and how you can do it, it's already a good start point in checking on, okay, what kind of data sources do we have? Usually, you have at least an indication what kind of data source are relevant. Even if you don't have that. And I just currently I have a project around the product development where we ask many questions and we want to answer it with metrics, but the data source actually does not exist. But through defining those metrics and knowing why they should measure it in a certain way, we can also provide the product developers those insights and those requirements to make sure that certain data points are triggered and stored, persisted at specific timestamps or time data. So it all comes with a right definition of why and how. If that is given and properly defined, then you have everything to find the right data sources.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, you said it already. So define the why and the how. So far so good. So if we have defined the right metrics and also built this data sources, how can you make sure then to convey that complex data, which is often really difficult to interpret? So how can you convey that data quickly and clearly to the corresponding target group? Eric, do you have any ideas here?
Yeah, that's not a simple issue. It's a good question, but the answer is more difficult, I guess. So in a perfect world, I would suggest companies to hire an expert. We have done that quite recently. So in my team, we are dealing with metrics and data visualization. And I have hired a data scientist recently in my team to cope with these requirements. And this is not easy because not all people really love to apply metrics, love to calculate metrics. Not everybody loves numbers. I can recommend hiring a mathematician or a physicist, but clearly I think it's always a good idea to get someone into the team who's familiar on these topics, who loves numbers, and then I think the rest will go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to add to that, and if you can't do that, aren't able to hire somebody, I think the other thing, a simple thing that companies can do is just some simple user testing, right? Try out different scenarios and see what's resonating with people, right? And how are people consuming that data? And are they consuming it in the fashion that you intended them to consume? And that can be done pretty quickly and pretty simply as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alissa. So how do you make sure that people of all levels or relevant levels are using the data insights and also spread it throughout the companies? Do you have here some more ideas, or is it via, like you said, user testing, or are there any other best practices how to make that sure?
Yeah, I think for sure. And then I think the other thing is also just understanding your audience, right? So what levels are you presenting the data to and what's most important to them? And so then you can really try and better understand and match to what that you're trying to tell, that story you're trying to tell. And then I think also individually, really have that in your team, right? So when you're an employee, you're presenting the information, you want to show others how you can that data can be transformed, right? How can it be consumed? And then if it's easily digestible, I think people just naturally want to use that, right? If you're presenting a huge spreadsheet with rows and columns, it's hard for people to understand and use that data.
Yeah.
Cannot agree more to what.
Yeah. Yeah, please go on.
Just want to say, cannot agree more to what Alissa just pointed out. So I have seen many dashboards from customers at SAP. They were showing their dashboards to us, and there was all these dashboards were following one mistake. They were all by far too much information on that dashboard. So people usually don't look at the personas, don't look at the target groups. So that is something I always recommend. Look at who is consuming the dashboard, and then you can apply, for example, user research activities, and then really dig into the topic. What is the data? What is the relevant data that the different target or persona groups really need to see, and then you can build up your dashboard and come up with a clear structure.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, even if you have target groups which do not really feel comfortable with data or data analysis itself, you still have opportunities with data education. I mean, you know, maybe from those fitness tracker apps you sometimes in those charts where you see graphs with a pace or whatever, you always see this little icon with an eye to check, okay, what is this kind of metric? How is it measured? And using those kind of opportunities too helps people at various different levels to understand what they are looking at actually.
Yeah. If we now look at it from a more technical point, how can modern data visualization tools or platforms help to get more value out of your data? So, Eric, what is needed from a platform perspective?
Yeah, that's also not an easy one. And I think what is needed is you need machine learning algorithms for that, because without proper algorithms that you have implemented, you will not get the necessary value out of the data that you are really looking for. Well, that's of course that's a challenge, and here again the discussion ties back again to the earlier question that we had: who will implement that? You need trained people who really know how that is going, who know how you can implement proper machine learning algorithms. We got one flagship product on our side. Don't want to make an advertisement block now here, but maybe most of you know SAP Analytics Cloud. That is one of our SAP's flagship products. And with that, we have implemented that. So we got machine learning algorithms. We got functionalities like search to insight or smart insights, where you can really use machine learning capabilities to get most out of the users, even if the users are not trained, or even they don't have any mathematical or scientific background.
Yeah, I totally agree, Eric. And I think modern tools have come such a long way from where they were years ago. I mean, years ago when I was an analyst, you know, my tool was Excel, right? That's what I lived in.
Yes.
And now so much of that has been baked into these tools like SAP Analytics Cloud. And I think the smart insights can really help, and the machine learning that's built into those tools, and just make it so much easier for people.
So yeah, we talked a lot about how to get to the right data, and also now about tools. When it now comes to visualization itself, so can you share some best practices in data visualization? Antje, are you familiar with some guidelines or principles, or how to really do the visualization?
Yes, definitely. I mean, from an experience point of view, I saw that everybody is nowadays in a rush. They want to have a quick and easy overview of complex situations. So you really need to be careful. I mean, we said it also before, not to overload your dashboards. So you need to optimize, let's say, the brain power you have available, not to overload it, as I said. And there are a couple of easy principles you can follow. So there's called Gestalt principles of visual perception, so that there are like easy rules to have the time series always on the x-axis, to have categories always on the y-axis, for example, to remove clutter because clutter is your enemy, to be careful with colors because colors can overload your perception as well. So there are many guidelines you can follow, and that's a good start to understand what kind of guidelines you have, and yeah, what kind of best practices you can use to make your dashboards as easy and understandable as possible.
I'd like to cross the bridge here to a quite famous set of rules that is called IBCS, so the International Business Communication Standard. Maybe some people in the line have heard about that. That's done by Rolf Hichert and Jürgen Feist. Maybe people have heard about these guys, great people at IBCS, and we are working closely together with IBCS, with the International Business Communication Standard. And IBCS, that's the basic principle of it, got a few very key rules. And there's a formula that they are referring to as the success formula. So you need to know, so success, it contains four letters. And if we look at these letters all individually, then it is S, it's say, it's unify, condense, check, express, structure, and simplify. And behind every of these letters, there's a very clear set of rules that you should follow to properly visualize metadata on your dashboard and get to a great reporting structure. So in case people have not heard about it, maybe you can go to ibcs.com, can strongly recommend that and advertise that we are heavily using that internally at SAP.
Great.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So Eric, are you saying then we shouldn't just throw everything in a pie chart?
So that is of course what IBCS is not saying. So one basic rule that IBCS says is don't use pie charts, and it's very interesting. Because, and I'm saying that always, if I see pie charts, and I've learned that from IBCS because 1.5 years ago, that was a few months before the Corona pandemic started, I visited an IBCS workshop. That was a 3 days on-site workshop organized by IBCS to educate people from the business sector on how to do properly IBCS reporting. And there, it was the first time that I've heard about that. Never use pie charts in your reporting. Why? And now comes the mathematical explanation. And I'm very sorry for that, for all people who think I don't care about math. But here's the storyline. So a pie chart, the area of a pie chart is scaling with radius square. So the area of a pie chart scales with radius square. So now, if you scale up the pie chart, if you scale the radius linearly, for example, if you double the radius, you will the area of the pie chart will increase by a factor of 4 because it's squared. And now you are distracting the information that you have in the pie chart, because doubling it means doubling the radius means doubling the size of the area. But this is not what the message that you want to send, right? It's not that the segment now gets 4 times the same meaning. So, but don't want to go into detail, but that is one of the basic rules from IBCS.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think this is a good starting point so that you at least know so what not to use, or maybe also some guidelines. What should you use? How should you visualize? But going from there, how do you then really find the right visualization for the target group? So Alissa, do you have some recommendation here?
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about this too, is it comes back to understanding what really matters, right? Who's looking at the data? Why are they looking at it? What story or, does that data need to tell? And then the audience. And then from there, you determine how best to display it using, best practices from IBCS. I think there's some other great resources out there as well. SAP has a nice little condensed handbook that has some great tips in it. That's a condensed. So I think, but those, you first need to have your foundation and then determine, you know, what kind of chart or do we need to put this in, and not a pie chart.
Not a pie chart, yeah. Okay, great. So it would be great to also get some practical insights from you, because you learned a lot, you did a lot of great projects. So can you share some customer examples of data visualization projects or data-driven projects, also in regards of learning or challenges on the way? So that would be a question to all of you. So yeah, maybe Eric, you want to start again?
Yeah, sure, can do. So one example that we got, so maybe we got a few soccer fans, football fans in the line. Maybe you know. So this year's European Championship again. So I personally on my side love to watch these games all the time, and I was always wondering how is it possible for all these soccer players to optimize themselves already always. And recently I got an answer, because we were engaging with a big customer out of the sports business, out of the soccer business, and what they wanted to do, they wanted to leverage the capabilities of SAP Analytics Cloud to build a dashboard showing key measures, central KPIs, for example, for their soccer players, and that ties back, of course, then to important training sessions that they are doing, where then they optimize themselves and they measure things. And so we were engaging them, and we talked to the business and to their users, how we can best support them to visualize their data appropriately. And in general, we do that in multiple steps. So first, of course, you need to understand the scope properly. What do they want? What do the users want to see on their dashboard? Then next, after the user research session phase, you need to build the solution. And third, and maybe the most important part that many people forget, and customers always usually are wondering why we are doing that, you need to validate back your solution with the users by applying a few central metrics, like, for example, what is called the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, where you give users, you all know that, you give them a question, how do you like the solution, and then they can rate that from scale from 1 to 10. So 1 is bad and 10 is awesome, fantastic solution. And then you do a survey with the users, and then you really get honest feedback, anonymous feedback on how you were performing. And this is usually how we in the team, we run validation sessions on site with customers.
Great, thanks for that example. Alissa, do you also have some customer examples for us?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a small example, but I think it's an important one. And I was working with a large multinational energy company here in Calgary, and they wanted to provide their field operators with a mobile application on a handheld device to plan their work. And so the operators needed to plan their route every single day. So they came in, they had their task list. And currently the way they were doing that was they were accessing that on a laptop, and it was a large table with over 25 columns, and they were trying to sort and filter to plan their day. And both the IT team and the business leaders were adamant that these operators needed all 25 columns. We couldn't get rid of any columns, and they were wanted to put all these on their mobile device. And so really stressed the importance that we needed to talk to the operators. How are they actually planning their day? What was most important to them? And so we ended up coming back with, there was really only 5 of the 25 fields that they were looking at, and the rest was just noise, and it was making it harder for them to actually do their job. And so it was really interesting, because through that interview and, you know, really digging deep and understanding, we went from 25 to 5 and really simplified the process for them. So it's just, you know, stressing the importance of how, you know, you need to ask some of these questions, and more isn't necessarily better, right? Usually less is better when you're trying to consume and understand data.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, nice example. Antje, do you also have some customer examples?
Yes, I was I was leading a huge project for a pharma company where we leveraged actually machine learning methods to provide forecasts, so predictions for the future based on a huge amount of past data. And throughout the project, I think one of the trickiest part was building up the trust for the target groups, because not everybody is a data scientist, and if you use machine learning methods to add value to your or to empower also the employees driving data-based decisions, it's always pretty difficult to build up this trust. So at the very first, they wanted to see every kind of information we use for the machine learning methods. And at some point we said, okay, we can't just show you everything. It's not bringing any benefit to you. And then we found out, okay, we might more show how accurate is the forecast, or what kind of main drivers do we have for the forecast, so they better understand what is actually happening behind the scenes, what they don't really understand in every detail because they're not the data scientist. So that was definitely a very interesting and challenging project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think trust in the data is, especially if it gets more complex and not so easy to understand, it's a really important topic to gain that trust in the data. Because, yeah, like you said, you can't explain everything, not if it's machine learning. Okay. Yeah, great. So we're almost through. We have now half an hour. So let me quickly have a look if there are any questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise them. If not, I would have a question. We talked a lot about business impact of data, and yeah, but how about the social impact? So data visualizations are really powerful, as we learned. So they're powerful tools also to communicate about complex data, but yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. And yeah, especially in uncertain times, rational people tend also to turn to data to help them inform their opinions and also decisions. But yeah, data can be also misinterpreted and even intentionally also abused. How do you think can you prevent this disinformation, or how should you deal with that? Yeah, also disinformation sometimes. What is your opinion on that? Maybe Eric, do you have an opinion here?
Yes, that is a difficult question, because maybe you know the famous citation from the British Premier Winston Churchill: the only statistics you can trust are those you falsified yourself. In Germany, the citation interestingly goes a bit wrong. I think if you translate it directly from British English to Germany, so the translation somehow went off a bit in Germany. But anyway, I think the meaning goes in the same direction. So yes, clearly, it can be easy, intentionally or in many cases unintentionally, that you bend the truth with statistics. So if you are the person sharing data, make sure that you don't unintentionally, for example, change the meaning of the underlying data. And if you read a graph, also make sure that you do not trust all your first impressions that you have. So if you don't know who created it, for example, what the agenda is, maybe there is a hidden agenda that people want to drive with creating illustrations. So don't trust the statistic you haven't generated yourself. Find out the sources and then be critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, as consumers of data, right, it's up to us when we're consuming that data to think critically about it, and to look at how is that data being presented, and is it skewing, right? Is the message being skewed by the way that they're presenting the data? So I think that's something that each of us can do whenever we're reading that in the media or wherever that may be.
Yeah. Okay, So I think, yeah, we learned a lot today about data, about best practices, about tools, about how to also, yeah, get to your target audience, find the right questions. Thank you for sharing all these insights and your expertise. And of course, thanks to the audience for joining this session. Please feel free to contact us or to reach out to our experts if you want to learn more about that topic. And yeah, I hope to see you all in one of our next panel discussions. And yeah, thanks again to our experts for joining.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye,
too.
guys.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.